Basic installation of a steel or graphite shaft into an iron or metal wood is a relatively easy procedure. There are details to performing the service that every technician should know in order to ensure safety and provide the best possible quality and service to customers. The procedures for installing graphite shafts into iron heads or metal woods are the same. Shaft specifications, trimming instructions, and final club specifications will vary depending on the type of club, the model and brand of shaft, the club number, and specifications of the player. The hosel of the club head to be shafted must be cleaned. If the head was previously shafted, all the old residue of epoxy must be removed from the hosel. This can be done by using the proper size drill bit and a hosel brush. Once the old epoxy residue has been removed from the hosel, it is recommended the hosel be cleaned using cotton swabs and acetone. Simply dip 1 or 2 of the cotton swabs into acetone and swab out the inside of the club head hosel. Once completed, set the head aside a few minutes to dry. Acetone evaporates very quickly and the head should be ready for assembly within 5 minutes. Once the shaft is selected for assembly, the shaft must be trimmed according to the manufacturer's recommended trimming instructions. If the shaft requires tip trimming, mark the amount that should be trimmed from the tip of the shaft. When cutting graphite shafts, the area that will be cut should be wrapped in masking tape to prevent the graphite fibers from fraying when cut. Cut the tip end of the shaft using the cutoff wheel. This wheel is designed for cutting steel or graphite shafts quickly and efficiently. When using the cutoff wheel, be sure to wear eye protection and follow all appropriate safety procedures. Check the bore depth of the head. This can be done by inserting the shaft into the head and marking the shaft with a piece of 3/4 inch masking tape. If the shaft will not fit easily into the head, use a writing pen, pencil, or similar object to check the bore depth and transfer this dimension to the shaft tip. Once the bore depth is determined and the shaft tip has been marked, the shaft is ready to prep for installation. Prepare the tip of the shaft for assembly. To abrade the shaft tip by hand, use a coarse grit sandpaper cut in a strip approximately 1 inch wide and 6 inches long. Place the shaft in a vise using the protective rubber shaft clamp. If the head is a style that requires a ferrule, you can abrade slightly above the hosel line. Place the strip of sandpaper over the shaft tip and work the sandpaper back and forth. Rotate the shaft and repeat until all areas of the shaft tip have been abraded. When using the 1 inch by 42 inch belt sander to prep graphite shafts, the Norex belt should be used. To prepare the tip of a graphite shaft, place the shaft tip parallel to the belt and press against the rotating belt. Leave the masking tape on the shaft while prepping. The tape not only marks the shaft to the proper bore depth, but protects the shaft during the abrading process. Using a constant pressure, rotate the shaft quickly against the turning belt. The shaft tip should be completely prepped in a few seconds. Visually inspect the tip to ensure the entire tip has been abraded. Do not oversand the tip. Too much sanding can reduce the diameter of the tip and possibly damage the graphite fibers. After prepping the tip, recheck the fit of the shaft into the hosel. In some cases, even after prepping, the shaft may not fit easily into the head. If this occurs and you have verified the hosel diameter and the shaft tip diameter are compatible, you can carefully abrade the shaft tip a little more until it slides into the hosel. Do not oversand the tip of graphite shafts. Oversanding can result in shaft failure. Place the club head on the shaft without epoxy. Mark the shaft on the butt end to the desired final playing length. When cutting graphite shafts, the area that will be cut should be wrapped in masking tape to prevent the graphite fibers from fraying when cut. Cut the shaft to the final playing length using the cutoff wheel. By cutting the shaft to final playing length before the head is epoxied on the shaft, it allows the option for swing weight adjustment. Refer to the swing weighting section of the step-by-step guide or the swing weighting video for details on swing weighting. Once the shaft has been cut to final length and any swing weight adjustment has been made, the club is ready for final assembly. Mix the epoxy. It is recommended that the Golfworks High Impact Epoxy, Tour Set Plus Epoxy, or Tour Set Epoxy be used. It is recommended that enough epoxy be used to adequately assemble 2 clubs. After dispensing the epoxy, mix well for 60 seconds. If the head style requires a ferrule, it is recommended the ferrule be installed at the time of final assembly with epoxy. To install the ferrule, dip the tip of the shaft into the epoxy mix. Place the ferrule over the tip of the shaft. Using a ferrule installation tool, install the ferrule under the shaft approximately a ½ inch. Once the ferrule is in position, take the head and push the ferrule into its final position. Tap the butt of the shaft on a hard surface to ensure the shaft is installed to the bottom of the hosel. Remove the head and place some epoxy inside the hosel. Dip the tip of the shaft into the epoxy mix and then install into the head. Rotate the head as you install it onto the shaft to ensure adequate epoxy coverage. Use a paper towel dampened with grip solvent to clean the excess epoxy from the shaft, head, and ferrule. Epoxy gun wipes can also be used. Set the club aside with the club head down to cure. Once the epoxy is cured, the ferrule may need finishing. Most ferrules will be slightly larger than the outside diameter of the hosel. To get a clean professional look, it is recommended the ferrule be turned down or smooth so it is the same diameter of the hosel. To finish the ferrule by hand, place a piece of 3/4 inch masking tape on the shaft next to the ferrule and on the hosel next to the ferrule. Place the club in a vise using a rubber shaft clamp to protect the shaft. Using a strip of fine grit sandpaper, lightly sand the ferrule, rotating the club during the process to get even material removal. Once the ferrule is evenly sanded on all sides and flush with the hosel, stop sanding. The ferrule can also be turned down using a linen polishing belt on the 1x42 inch belt sander. Before using the cloth belt on the belt sander, place a piece of 3/4 inch masking tape above the ferrule and on the hosel. This protects the shaft and hosel during the process. If you use the belt sander, it is recommended that you practice on some old clubs before you start. To finish the process and bring the ferrule to a glossy shine, apply acetone to the ferrule using a cotton swab or a paper towel. Do not rub the ferrule. Lightly brush the ferrule with the swab or the paper towel to bring it to a glossy shine. Install the grip using the proper procedures.